My pregnant belly ached as I heard my sister demand call me mom to my 3-year-old daughter. When confronted, she sobbed, "I've been sleeping with Mark while you care for his dying mother." My husband defended her, not me. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. To really understand how devastating this all was, you have to understand who Janet was to me. Or, at least, who I thought she was. She was my big sister. 10 years older. She was the one who taught me how to put on makeup, the one who drove me and my friends to the mall, the one I always looked up to. And for my entire life, she had been my rock. But Janet carried a sadness with her, a shadow that never really left her eyes. She couldn't have children. It wasn't for lack of trying. Lord, how she tried. Her and her husband went through years of it. The doctors, the endless tests, the needles, the hope that would build up so high it was dizzying, and then the crash that came every single month. It was awful to watch. They spent so much money, so much of their hearts, trying to start a family. Eventually, they had to stop. The doctors told them it just wasn't going to happen. And I think a part of her just broke. She and her husband, they stayed together, but the laughter never quite reached her eyes after that. We all tiptoed around it. Baby showers were hard. I remember when I got pregnant with my daughter, Lily, I was almost afraid to tell her. Of course, she was happy for me, or at least she put on a brave face. "Oh, Sarah, that's wonderful," she'd said, hugging me a little too tight. A baby in the family. I can't wait to be an aunt. And she was the best aunt. When Lily was born, Janet was there. She was the first one to hold her after me and my husband, Mark. She poured all of that motherly love she had, all that love that had nowhere else to go, right into my daughter. Lily was 3 at the time this all happened. A little whirlwind of blonde curls and endless questions. Why is the sky blue, Mommy? Where do the birds sleep? And she absolutely adored her Aunt Janet. Janet was the fun aunt. She wasn't like me, tired and pregnant and just trying to get through the day. Janet would get down on the floor and play Barbies for hours. She'd bake these elaborate cookies, the kind that looked like they came from a fancy bakery. And she volunteered to babysit all the time. Honestly, she was a lifesaver. At this point, I was 7 months pregnant with my second child, our little boy. And this pregnancy was hard. My ankles were swollen to the size of grapefruits, my back ached so bad I could barely stand up straight, and I was so tired. All the time. My husband, Mark, he's a good man, or I thought he was. He worked long hours, trying to get ahead at his firm, so I was alone with Lily a lot. Having Janet there, it felt like a gift from God. She'd text me, "You look worn out. Why don't I take Lily to the park for a few hours? Go put your feet up." And I would. I would sink onto the sofa with a sigh of relief and thank my lucky stars for a sister like her. I trusted her. I trusted her completely. She was family. She was more than family. She was my sister. I remember this one afternoon, maybe a week before everything imploded. I'd just gotten home from a doctor's appointment, my feet were throbbing, and all I wanted to do was lie down. I walked down the hall to Lily's room to check on her, and the curtains were drawn. The room was dim and quiet, and Janet was sitting in the rocking chair, just watching Lily sleep in her little toddler bed. She didn't hear me come in. I stood in the doorway, my hand on my big belly, just watching them. It was so peaceful. I saw Janet lean forward, her hand so gentle, and brush a curl off of Lily's damp forehead. And then she whispered something, so quiet I almost didn't catch it. She said, "I love you just like you're my own." My heart it swelled. I thought it was the sweetest, most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I saw it as a testament to her love, a sign of our wonderful, close-knit family. I felt a little pang of sadness for her, for the children she'd never get to rock to sleep, but mostly, I just felt this overwhelming wave of gratitude. Gratitude for this amazing woman who loved my child so fiercely. I remember thinking, right then, how incredibly lucky I was. How lucky we all were to have her in our lives. I backed out of the room quietly, not wanting to spoil the moment. I went to the kitchen and started making dinner, a stupid, happy smile on my face. I had no idea. I was so blind. I had no idea that her words weren't a sweet sentiment. They were a confession. A warning. I look back on that quiet moment in the nursery, the dim light, the smell of baby powder. And it doesn't feel peaceful anymore. It feels chilling. It feels like I was standing there, smiling, while a thief was casing the one thing I held most precious in the entire world. The night it all blew up was a Friday. Mark had, for a miracle, gotten off work at a reasonable time. He'd walked in the door, looked at me, really looked at me, and I must have looked like a wreck. I was still in my maternity sweatpants, I hadn't washed my hair, and I was pretty sure I had some of Lily's lunch stuck on my shirt. "Wow," he said, and I braced myself. But he just smiled, a soft, kind smile. "You look like you need a break. We need a break. Let's go out tonight. Just us. A real date." It felt like a lifeline. Being this pregnant is a strange thing. You're so full of life, but you also feel like your body isn't your own anymore. You feel, well, you just don't feel like yourself. A simple dinner out, a chance to wear a dress, to put on a little lipstick, to feel like a woman instead of just a walking, aching, exhausted vessel, it sounded like absolute heaven. Of course, I knew exactly who to call. I dialed Janet's number, and she picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Jan," I said, "this is so last minute, but—" "Say no more," she chirped. "You two go have fun. I'd love to watch Lily. Don't you worry about a single thing. Lily and I are going to have a movie night with popcorn." I could have cried with relief. "You're a lifesaver, Janet." "I mean it. I'll pay you, of course." "Oh, don't be ridiculous," she said, laughing. "She's my favorite girl. It's not babysitting, it's a treat. Now go. Get dressed up. Have fun." So we did. We went to this little Italian place downtown that we loved, the kind with the red and white checkered tablecloths and the candles stuck in old wine bottles, dripping wax all down the side. We sat in a cozy booth in the corner. We ordered real, grown-up food. I had a strawberry daiquiri, and it felt so decadent. We talked. We actually talked. Not about bills, or the leaky faucet, or who was going to pick up what. We talked about the baby, about the names we were arguing over. We talked about Lily, how smart and funny she was getting. Mark held my hand across the table. He told me I was beautiful. And I actually felt it, for the first time in months. He started talking about this big project at his firm, how it was going really well, and his boss had hinted a promotion might be coming at the end of the year. It would be perfect timing, he said, his eyes bright with excitement. A bigger salary would mean we could really beef up Lily's college fund, and we wouldn't have to worry at all when the new baby comes. It all felt so stable. So safe. So real. We were a team. We were this happy, solid couple, excited about our future, our growing family. For those 2 hours, in that warm, garlic-scented restaurant, everything was perfect. We got home around 9:30. We were holding hands walking up the driveway, still kind of floating in that happy date night bubble. The house was dark, except for the faint, flickering blue light of the TV coming from the living room. "Must have been a long movie," Mark whispered, unlocking the door. We let ourselves in as quietly as we could. We didn't want to wake Lily if she'd fallen asleep. And sure enough, as we peeked around the corner into the living room, we saw them. Lily was curled up in her pink pajamas on one end of the long sofa, fast asleep, her thumb stuck in her mouth. And Janet was on the other end, her feet tucked up under her, her head tilted back, watching the end credits of Moana. It was such a sweet, peaceful scene. My heart just felt full. "Let's not disturb them," Mark whispered in my ear. I nodded. We tiptoed past the living room doorway and went straight into the kitchen. I was carrying a little white box with my leftover cannoli. I'd been too full to finish it. Mark had his keys in his hand. The plan was to just put the food in the fridge, grab a glass of water, and head quietly upstairs. We were trying to be as silent as possible. But the kitchen, it shares a wall with the living room. And even through the sound of the movie's closing song, we heard Lily's little voice. She must have stirred in her sleep. Her voice was thick and sleepy, a little raspy. "Aunt Janet," she mumbled. "I'm thirsty." There was a pause. Mark and I froze right where we were, halfway to the refrigerator. His hand was still on the light switch, but he hadn't flipped it. We didn't want to startle them. We heard the rustle of a blanket, and then we heard Janet's voice. It was strange. It wasn't her normal, cheerful Aunt Janet voice. It was syrupy, sugary sweet. Almost like she was putting on a performance for someone. "Of course, my sweet girl," she said. "Auntie will get you some nice apple juice." We heard her get up from the sofa. We still didn't move, just waited, expecting her to walk into the dark kitchen and flip on the light, and then we'd all say hello. But she didn't come in. She must have stopped right at the doorway, just on the other side of the wall from us. Then Lily's voice came again, a little clearer this time, more awake. "Apple juice, please, Aunt Janet." And then Janet said it. The 9 words that stopped my heart. The 9 words that cracked the foundation of my entire world. She said them in that same, sweet, poisonous, sing-song voice. "Only if you call me Mom." The air in the kitchen went still. It was so quiet, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded like a jet engine. My fingers went numb. I was still holding that little pastry box, but I couldn't feel it. It was like the sound, those words, had traveled directly into my veins and turned my blood to ice. Did I hear that right? I must have misheard. The TV was on, Lily was mumbling. Maybe she said, "Come on?" Or wait a moment. My brain scrambled, trying to find another explanation, any other explanation. I turned my head, very, very slowly, to look at Mark. He was standing right next to me, not moving. His face was pale. His eyes were wide. His mouth was slightly open. He'd heard it too. There was no mistake. In that 1 second, every sweet gesture, every life-saving offer to babysit, every "I love her like she's my own" replayed in my mind. But this time, they weren't sweet. They were sinister. They were calculating. They were tainted. My sister, my own sister, was in the other room, under my roof, trying to get my daughter to what? Replace me? The silence in that kitchen stretched for an eternity. The ice in my veins didn't melt. It began to boil. In that 1 second, the grateful, tired, pregnant woman was gone. And a mother had taken her place. The fire that started in my belly was so hot, it felt like it was going to consume me. It wasn't a thought. It was a physical reaction. I slammed the cannoli box down on the granite countertop. The crack of the styrofoam hitting the stone echoed in the silent house. I didn't care about being quiet anymore. "Mark," I said. My voice was low. It was shaking, but not with fear. It was shaking with a rage so pure I didn't even recognize it as my own. "Get our daughter. Take her upstairs to her room. Put her to bed. Now." He just stared at me for a second, his face still blank and white with shock. Mark. Go, I repeated. It wasn't a request. It was an order. Something in my tone must have snapped him out of it. He nodded once, his eyes wide, and moved past me, a ghost in the dim light. He went out of the kitchen and into the living room. I heard him murmur something soft to Lily. Hey, sweetie, let's go upstairs. Time for bed. I heard the sound of him scooping her up into his arms, her sleepy, confused protest, but I'm thirsty. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, moving away. The moment I knew Lily was out of earshot, I moved. I didn't run. I walked out of that kitchen and into the living room like a soldier marching into battle. Janet was standing in the middle of the room, frozen. The Disney movie had ended, and the TV screen was black, reflecting the two of us. She looked like a deer in the headlights. Her face was pale. She knew. She knew we were home. She knew we'd heard. The fake, syrupy smile was gone, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated panic. What did you just say to my daughter? I asked. My voice was still low, still shaking. Eerily calm. Every word was spaced, and sharp as a shard of glass. Sarah, she stammered, her voice high and thin. She tried to laugh, a pathetic, squeaking sound. You're home. You scared me. I didn't hear you come in. Don't, I said, taking a step closer. Don't play dumb with me, Janet. I heard you. We both heard you. What did you just say to her? It was just a joke, Sarah, she said, wringing her hands together. You know, we were just playing. A little game. A game? I let out a laugh, but it was a harsh, ugly sound that tore out of my throat. A game? You think this is a game? You think trying to manipulate my 3-year-old daughter into calling you mom is a game? Do you think I'm stupid? I took another step. She took a step back, bumping into the coffee table. No! I didn't mean it like that. You're twisting it. Tears started to well up in her eyes. The audacity. She was going to cry? You don't understand, she whispered. I just love her so much. I don't care. I shouted. The calm was gone. The dam had broken. I don't care how much you love her. You don't get to do this. She has a mother. I am her mother. I am 7 months pregnant, carrying her brother, and I am her mother. You are her aunt. That is all you will ever be. Do you understand me? The tears were streaming down her face now, but they meant nothing to me. They were just water. I'm sorry, Sarah, she sobbed, holding her hands up. I'm so sorry. I slipped. Sorry doesn't cut it, I snapped. I was trembling from head to toe, so full of adrenaline I felt like I was vibrating. I pointed a shaky finger toward the front door. Get out of my house. What? Sarah, please, it's late, let's just talk. No. We're done talking. You are done here. Get your things. Get out. Please, Sarah, don't do this. I love you. Get out. I roared it. The words echoed in the house, raw and ugly. That finally did it. She let out a choked, desperate sob. She fumbled for her purse on the armchair, grabbed her keys from the side table, and she practically ran to the front door. She ripped it open and ran out into the night, slamming it shut behind her. The house fell silent again. The thud of the door still hung in the air. I stood there, in the middle of my living room, in the dark. I was breathing hard, like I'd just run a marathon. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it might break free. I felt the baby kick, a sharp, sudden jab, as if he knew. As if he was as angry as I was. I wrapped my arms around my stomach, trying to calm myself, trying to breathe. I expected to feel, I don't know, relief? Victory? But I just felt violated. And then I heard Mark's slow footsteps on the stairs. He was coming back down. And I waited. I waited for my husband to come down, to see me shaking and furious, and to wrap his arms around me and tell me I did the right thing. I heard Mark's footsteps, one slow step after another. He wasn't rushing to my side. He was dragging his feet. I turned to face the staircase as he came into view. I was still trembling, my arms crossed protectively over my belly, expecting to see support in his eyes. I needed him to be on my side. I needed him to be just as outraged as I was. But the look on his face wasn't outrage. It wasn't support. It was annoyance. He looked annoyed. He walked into the room, but he didn't come to me. He avoided my eyes, went straight to the TV, and fumbled for the button to turn it off. It was already off. He just needed something to do. The room was dark, lit only by the soft glow from the kitchen entryway. "Did you have to yell like that, Sarah?" he said, his back still to me. "You probably woke up Lily." I stared at his silhouette, my brain short-circuiting. I couldn't compute. Did I have to? "Mark, did you hear what she said? Did you not just hear what she asked our daughter to do?" He finally turned around, and he had this weary, put-upon look on his face, like I was the one who had created this problem. "I heard her, Sarah. It was weird. Okay? I get it. It was a stupid, weird thing to say. But you flew off the handle. You went nuclear." I felt a cold dread creep over my skin, pushing aside the hot anger. Flew off the handle? She asked our daughter to call her mom. How am I supposed to react to that, Mark? Am I supposed to what? Offer her a cup of tea and talk about it? By talking to her like an adult, maybe, he said, and his voice was laced with this awful, patronizing condescension. Not by screaming at her like a banshee and throwing her out of the house into the dark. My God, Sarah. What were you thinking? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like we were living in two completely different realities. She crossed a line, Mark. A huge, red, uncrossable line. He sighed, a long, dramatic, theatrical sigh, and ran a hand through his hair. "Look," he said, walking toward me but stopping a good 5 feet away, as if I were a wild animal he was afraid to get close to. I know you're emotional right now. But your pregnancy hormones they're making you overreact." The words hit me like a physical slap in the face. Hormones. He was blaming my body. He was blaming my pregnancy, the child we created together, for my perfectly valid, perfectly normal reaction to a threat against our family. "This has nothing to do with my hormones," I said, my voice dangerously quiet again. "This has to do with my sister trying to psychologically manipulate our child." He actually scoffed. A little, disbelieving laugh. "Oh, psychologically manipulate? Come on, Sarah, don't be so dramatic. You're not in a movie. The woman can't have kids. She's grieving. She's been grieving for 10 years. She slipped up. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything." I insisted, my voice cracking, the tears finally coming, but they were tears of rage, not sadness. "And even if she is grieving, that does not give her a free pass to try and take my place." "Nobody is trying to take your place," he said, raising his voice. "You're being ridiculous. She's a sad woman who made a stupid comment. And you just destroyed her. Honestly, I think you owe her an apology. An apology. He thought I should apologize. To her. I just stared at him, my mouth hanging open. The man who was supposed to be my partner. My protector. The father of my children. He was standing here, in my living room, after what we both heard, and he was defending her. He was invalidating me. He was telling me my instincts as a mother were wrong. He was telling me I was crazy, that I was just a hysterical pregnant woman. In that moment, I felt a chasm open up between us. A deep, dark, cold canyon. He wasn't on my team. He wasn't even in the same stadium. And that betrayal, in that second, felt almost as bad as what Janet had done. I couldn't even find the words to respond to him. Apologize? To her? The idea was so grotesque, so profoundly insulting, that it was almost laughable. I couldn't. I turned away from him, the tears of anger stinging my eyes, and I walked past him, up the stairs. The fight was over. It was pointless. He clearly wasn't going to see it. He had chosen not to see it. Our bedroom felt cold, and not just because the window was open a crack. I went into our attached bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red and puffy. My face was pale. I looked tired. I looked like a hormonal, pregnant woman. And I hated him for it. I hated him for making me doubt myself, even for a single, fleeting second. Was I overreacting? I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles white. No. I was not. My gut, my soul, every maternal fiber in my being was screaming that I was not. What Janet did was a violation. What Mark was doing, that was a betrayal. I changed into my pajamas, a big, soft nightgown, and got into bed. I pulled the covers all the way up to my chin. The bed felt huge and empty. Mark came in a few minutes later. He didn't speak. He just got ready for bed in that angry, deliberate silence, the sound of his toothbrush too loud, the way he shut the closet door with just a little too much force. He got into his side of the bed. And he left a huge, deliberate, icy cold space between us. He turned his back to me immediately. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even close my eyes. The anger and the hurt were just churning inside me, a toxic, sickening cocktail. I was so angry at Janet for her calculated cruelty. And I was so furious with Mark for his lack of support, for his blindness. It felt like I was completely, utterly alone in this. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I couldn't lie there anymore. The silence was too loud. I got up, my big belly making it an awkward process. I don't know what I needed. A glass of water. A different room. Just air. I walked over to the window that overlooked our quiet street. I pulled back the curtain. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe just to watch the wind blow the leaves, something to quiet my mind. But as I looked down, my eyes caught a familiar shape. A dark blue sedan. Parked just across the street, under the sickly orange glow of a streetlight. It was Janet's car. My blood ran cold. My heart did a painful lurch. She hadn't left. She hadn't gone home. She had just driven across the street, killed her lights, and parked. What was she doing? Just sitting there? Waiting? Staring at my house? The sight of that car felt predatory. It felt unhinged. It was the behavior of a stalker, not a sister. I turned back into the room. Mark was on his side, his breathing even. He was pretending to be asleep. I knew he wasn't. She's still here, I said, my voice flat and cold. He didn't move for a moment. Then he let out a heavy, put-upon sigh. What? Janet, I said, walking back toward the bed. Her car. It's parked across the street. She's just sitting out there. In the dark. He rolled over to face me, his expression unreadable in the shadows. She's probably just upset, Sarah. Crying. She needs a minute to compose herself before she drives home. It's been over an hour, Mark, I countered, my voice rising. She's not composing herself. She's watching the house. It's creepy. I don't like it. I want her gone. He sighed again, that same long-suffering, martyred sound, as if my concern was the most massive inconvenience he had ever faced. Fine, he muttered, throwing back the covers with a frustrated motion. I'll go out. I'll tell her to leave. Happy now? He made it sound like he was doing me a huge favor. Like he was the long-suffering husband, bravely venturing out to deal with my hysterical, imaginary fears. He pulled on a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt from the floor, not even looking at me as he padded out of the room, his bare feet slapping angrily on the hardwood floor. I listened to his footsteps go down the stairs. And then I heard the sound of the front door opening and closing. I went straight back to the window. My heart was pounding a nervous, angry rhythm against my ribs. I pulled the curtain back just enough to see. I watched Mark's figure cross the empty street, illuminated by that one streetlight. He walked up to the driver's side of Janet's car. This is it, I thought. He's going to tell her off. He's going to tell her to go home, that she's scaring me. He's finally being my husband. I expected him to lean down, talk to her through the window for 30 seconds, and then for the car's headlights to come on and for her to drive away. That's what should have happened. But it didn't. I watched, in complete, frozen disbelief, as the car's interior light flashed on. The passenger door opened. And then I watched as my husband, Mark, got into the car with my sister. He closed the door behind him. The interior light went out, plunging them back into a shadowy, intimate silhouette. What was he doing? Why would he get in the car? I glanced at the digital clock on our nightstand. The glowing red numbers read 10:45 p.m. I stood there, my arms crossed over my chest, one hand resting on my pregnant belly, and I watched. 1 minute passed. Then 5. The car just sat there, a dark, silent lump on our quiet suburban street. What could they possibly be talking about for so long? Was he yelling at her on my behalf, in the privacy of the car? Or was he? God, was he apologizing for my behavior? The thought made me sick to my stomach. I'm so sorry, Janet. Sarah's just hormonal. She didn't mean it. 10 minutes. The clock on the nightstand ticked over. 10:55 p.m. I could hear it ticking, a loud, awful sound in the quiet room. Lily coughed in her sleep from her room down the hall. The baby inside me gave a slow, rolling shift, as if he, too, was uncomfortable. 15 minutes. 11 p.m. Still nothing. The car was completely still. Were they just talking? Arguing? I started to feel a strange, new, creeping unease that had nothing to do with the call me mom comment anymore. This felt different. This felt secret. 20 minutes. 11:05 p.m. My legs started to ache from standing. I sat down on the edge of the bed, but I couldn't take my eyes off that dark car. This was insane. There was no good, innocent reason for my husband to be sitting in a dark car with my sister, the woman who had just tried to poach our child, for this long. None. 0. 25 minutes. 11:10 p.m. My mind started to race through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Was she threatening to hurt herself? Was she having a complete, psychotic breakdown? Even so, why was he still in there? Why wasn't he calling me? Why wasn't he? I don't know, calling 911? I thought about going down there. Just marching across the street in my nightgown and my bare feet and ripping that car door open. But I didn't. Because I just knew, that if I did, I would be the one who looked crazy. He would use it against me. See, Sarah? This is what I'm talking about. You're out of control. So I waited. I forced myself to sit there, frozen, and just wait. Finally. The clock read 11:14 p.m. Just under 30 minutes. The passenger door opened. The interior light flashed on again, briefly illuminating the two of them inside. Then Mark got out. He shut the door. He gave a little wave. A tiny, familiar, friendly wave. And the car's headlights came on. Janet pulled away from the curb and drove off down the street, disappearing into the night. Mark walked back across the street, his head down. I watched him come up the walkway. I heard the front door open, the lock click. I stood up from the bed, my body rigid, my blood like ice water. I had 1,000 questions, and I just knew, I wasn't going to like a single one of the answers. He came back into the bedroom a minute later. He was moving with this strange, deliberate casualness, as if he'd just gone downstairs to check the lock on the front door. He took off his sweatpants, letting them fall to the floor, and got back into bed, not saying a single word. He didn't even look at me. I let the silence hang there, heavy and toxic, for a full minute. I was giving him a chance to speak first. To explain. He didn't. He just lay there. So? I finally asked, my voice tight and strained. What was that all about? He rolled over, his back to me. What was what about? Mark, don't you dare play dumb with me, I said, the anger flaring up, hot and quick. You were out there. In her car. For almost half an hour. What in the hell were you two talking about? He let out a sigh, that same god-awful sigh of the long-suffering husband. I told you, Sarah. She was really upset. She was a mess. Crying hysterically. I was just comforting her. Making sure she was okay to drive. It takes 30 minutes to comfort someone? I pressed, stepping closer to his side of the bed. I was standing over him now. What exactly did you say to her? Did you tell her what she did was wrong? Did you defend me? Did you defend our daughter? He was silent for a long, long moment. The silence was his answer. We just talked, Sarah, he finally said, his voice muffled by the pillow. It's not a big deal. It is a very big deal to me. I said, my voice rising, and I didn't even care anymore. I want to know what was said. I am your wife. This involves our family. I have a right to know. He finally, angrily, rolled over to face me. His face was a hard mask of annoyance. Look, I am not doing this right now. I'm tired. I just dealt with your hysterical sister. I'm not going to be interrogated by my hysterical wife. She was upset, I calmed her down, she left. End of story. I don't see the point in having this trivial conversation over and over again. Trivial. He thought this was trivial. Tell me what you talked about, I demanded. I told you, I was comforting her, he snapped, his voice finally rising to match mine. What do you want, a word-for-word transcript? I don't remember. I was just trying to defuse the situation. Just drop it. Why are you protecting her? I asked, and the question hung there, heavy and poisonous, in the air between us. Why are you so determined, so desperate, to defend her, and to shut me down? He just stared at me, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. And then he said the words again. The words that were his weapon. The words designed to make me feel small, and crazy, and weak. "You're overreacting, Sarah. You're emotional, and you're pregnant, and you're blowing this entire thing way out of proportion." And with that, he turned his back to me again. It was a clear, unmistakable signal. The conversation was over. He was building a wall between us, brick by brick, and I had no idea how to break it down. I stood there in the dark, shaking. Feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. It was so clear. Crystal clear. I was not going to get the truth from my husband. He wasn't just confused. He wasn't just playing peacemaker. He was hiding something. He was actively, deliberately lying to my face. And I suddenly knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that if I wanted the truth, the real truth, I had to go to the source. I had to talk to Janet. The next morning was awful. It was a Saturday. Mark was home. The tension in the house was a living, breathing thing. It was so thick, I felt like I was wading through it. Mark and I moved around each other like two angry, silent ghosts. He made coffee, slamming the cabinets. I made toast, the scrape of a knife on the bread sounding like a scream. We didn't speak. He ate his breakfast standing at the counter, scrolling through his phone. He was deliberately ignoring me. And I was letting him. I was gathering my strength. Lily was the only one in the house who was normal. She sat in her high chair, blissfully unaware, chatting away to her stuffed bunny, her little voice a bizarre-sounding island of happiness in a sea of toxic silence. I couldn't do it with him here. I had to wait. "I'm going to Home Depot," he announced to the room at large around 10 o'clock. "Need to get some stuff for that leaky faucet." "Okay," I said, not looking up from the sink where I was washing Lily's plate. He left with a mumbled, "See you later," that he didn't even direct at me. The moment I heard his truck pull out of the driveway, the sound of the engine fading down the street, I felt a strange, cold sense of relief. The performance was over. Now I could get to work. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone. My heart was thumping so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I felt like I was about to do something dangerous. Like I was about to step off a cliff, and I didn't know if there was water or rocks below. I pulled up Janet's contact information. My thumb hovered over her name. What was I even going to say? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I couldn't be the hysterical woman Mark thought I was. I couldn't be emotional. I had to be calm. I had to be in control. I typed out a short, simple text message. My thumbs were clumsy. "We need to talk." A completely honest, heart-to-heart conversation. Just you and me. Now. I need you to come over. I hit send before I could second-guess myself, before I could chicken out. I stared at the phone, expecting her to argue, to make excuses, to put it off, to say she was too upset. My phone buzzed with a reply almost immediately. One word. Okay. My stomach lurched. I texted back, "When?" The reply came. "I can be there in 20 minutes. 20 minutes. Oh, God. It was happening. It was really happening. I spent the next 20 minutes pacing my living room like a caged animal. I tidied up things that didn't need tidying. I fluffed the pillows on the sofa. I wiped down the kitchen counter that was already clean. I was trying to keep my hands busy, trying to quiet the storm in my head. What if Mark was right? The doubt was a little, insidious whisper. What if I was just a crazy, hormonal pregnant woman? What if I had blown everything out of proportion, and I was about to completely destroy my relationship with my sister over nothing? No. I stopped pacing. I looked at the empty spot on the sofa where my daughter had been sleeping last night. I thought about the 30 minutes in the dark car. I thought about the coldness in my husband's eyes. My instincts were not wrong. Something was deeply, fundamentally broken here. And I was going to find out what it was. The doorbell rang. I jumped, my heart leaping into my throat. It felt like a gunshot in the silent house. I walked to the door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I took one last deep, fortifying breath, my hand on my belly. We can do this. I opened the door. Janet stood on my doorstep. She looked terrible. She looked even worse than last night. Her eyes were swollen and red, so puffy they were almost slits. She had dark, bruised-looking circles under them. She was wearing the exact same clothes from the night before, now rumpled and sad. She hadn't been home. She hadn't slept. She looked broken. And for a fleeting, dangerous second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered her words to my daughter. I remembered my husband's back, turned to me in our bed. And the pity vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Come in, I said, my voice flat. I stepped back to let her pass, and I closed the door behind her. The click of the deadbolt sounded final. She didn't come into the living room. She just stood there, awkwardly, in the entryway, clutching her purse to her stomach like it was a shield. I didn't offer her a seat. I didn't offer her coffee. I just stood across from her, my arms crossed over my chest, and I waited. I let the silence stretch. Sarah, she began, her voice thick and watery with tears. Sarah, I am so sorry about last night. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know what came over me. It was a stupid, horrible, ugly thing to say. I would never, ever try to hurt you. Or Lily. You know that. I love you. I just looked at her. I didn't say a word. My silence was a wall. I let her talk, let her squirm. It's just. She faltered, her gaze dropping to the floor. She couldn't look at me. It's been so hard. For so long. Seeing you so happy. You have everything, Sarah. Just everything. This beautiful house. A great husband. A perfect, beautiful little girl. And now another baby on the way. She started to cry again, not the hysterical sobs from last night, but these soft, broken, gulping sobs. I know it's not an excuse, she choked out, wiping her nose on her sleeve. I know it's not. But ever since you got married, and then when you got pregnant with Lily, I became so jealous. It was like a poison. Like something sour and ugly inside me, all the time. You have everything I ever wanted, everything I can't have. A family. I listened. My arms were still crossed, my face was still stone. I felt a flicker of the old sympathy I used to have for her. I knew her struggle. I had been there for her. I had held her hand while she cried after a failed IUI. I had listened for hours on the phone. I understood her pain. But this felt different. This wasn't just sadness. This was something darker. Jealousy doesn't explain what you said to my daughter, Janet, I said, my voice still steady, still cold. It doesn't explain why you tried to make her call you Mom. She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. I know, it was wrong. It was. I started to fantasize, she admitted. It was stupid, but I would be here, with Lily, playing. And Mark would come home from work, and you'd be at your mother-in-law's. And for just a few minutes. I could I could pretend. I could pretend this was my life. That she was my little girl. That he was. She stopped. A chill, sharper and colder this time, went right down my spine. This was sicker than I thought. This wasn't a slip-up. This was a pattern. A delusion she was actively cultivating. In my house. She must have sensed the shift in my mood, the hardening in my eyes. She took a step forward, her hands outstretched, as if to plead with me. But that's not the worst part, she sobbed, her voice barely a whisper. I did something terrible, Sarah. Something so much worse. Something awful. And I need to tell you. But you have to promise you won't hate me. Please, Sarah, you're my sister. I don't want to lose you. Please. My heart, which had been pounding with anger, now started to pound with dread. Worse? What could possibly be worse than what she had already admitted? I felt like I was on the edge of that cliff again, and this time, the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. The air in the entryway was thick and heavy. It was hard to breathe. I could hear the clock ticking on the mantelpiece in the living room. Each tick was a hammer blow against the suffocating silence. Janet was still crying, but now it was a different kind of crying. It was desperate. Panicked. The crying of a trapped animal. What? I finally managed to say. The word came out as a dry croak. What did you do, Janet? She wouldn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on the hardwood floor, on the space between her feet. She was shaking her head back and forth, muttering, I can't. I can't, you'll hate me. Yes, you can, I said, and my voice was hard as iron. I was done with the tears. I was done with the games. You started this. You're going to finish it. Tell me what you did. She took a ragged, shuddering breath. She looked up. Her face was a complete mess of tears and snot and mascara. Her eyes were wild, pleading, begging me for an absolution I could not, and would not, give. It's about Mark, she whispered. My blood ran cold. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. What about Mark? She squeezed her eyes shut, as if the words themselves were physically painful to say. As if saying them would make it real. There was a long, agonizing pause. The world just stopped. And then she said it. I've been sleeping with him. The words just hung there. In the air. Between us. They didn't make sense. It was like she was speaking a foreign language, a collection of sounds that my brain couldn't assemble into meaning. Sleeping with him. Sleeping. With. Mark. My Mark. My husband. The father of my child, and the father of the child in my belly. Her brother-in-law. I think I stopped breathing. The entryway, the whole house, started to tilt. The edges of my vision went blurry and dark, like I was going to faint. I put a hand out, pressing my palm flat against the cool drywall of the hallway to steady myself. What? I whispered. It was the only word my brain could form. It was a tiny, broken sound. She opened her eyes, and the dam didn't just break. It exploded. The words came spilling out of her in a frantic, jumbled, ugly rush. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so sorry. It just happened. We didn't plan it. I swear we didn't plan it. It was a mistake. A horrible, horrible mistake. It didn't mean anything. I swear it didn't. A mistake. She was calling the complete and utter demolition of my entire life a mistake. I just stared at her. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't feel my own body. Every memory I had of the two of them together, in the same room, flashed through my mind, but now in a horrifying new light. Mark laughing at one of her jokes at a barbecue. Janet bringing him a beer when he was mowing the lawn. The two of them chatting in the kitchen while I put Lily to bed. Was it all a lie? Was it all happening right under my nose, all this time? And then, the most recent memory surfaced, sharp and brutal. Mark. In her car. For 30 minutes. In the dark. It wasn't about comforting her. It wasn't about diffusing the situation. It wasn't about my hormones. It was about them. It had always been about them. The scene replayed in my head, but now I understood. I had been a fool. A blind, naive, trusting fool. My sister. And my husband. The two people in the world I should have been able to trust the most. They had betrayed me. Together. In the most fundamental, sickening way possible. Once the first confession was out, it was like a floodgate had opened, and all the filth came rushing out. Janet seemed to need to purge herself of every single dirty secret. Maybe she thought it would make her feel better. Maybe she thought if she confessed everything, I could, what? Forgive her? It just made me feel sicker. Sicker and colder. When? I asked. My voice was a hollow echo in the entryway. I didn't recognize it. When did it start? A few months ago, she stammered, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, leaving a black streak of mascara. It was when you started going over to Mark's parents' house so much. In the evenings. The words hit me like a physical blow. My mother-in-law. Mark's mom. She had advanced Alzheimer's. Her health had taken a nosedive in the last year, and she needed round-the-clock care. My father-in-law, a sweet man, was completely overwhelmed. He was breaking. So I, being a nurse, had started going over there 3 or 4 evenings a week. I'd go after I fed Lily dinner. I'd help my father-in-law get her ready for bed. I'd check her medications, make sure she ate, help him bathe her, which was a 2-person job. It was hard work. It was heartbreaking, thankless, draining work. Seeing this woman who used to be so vibrant just gone. And while I was over at their house, wiping food off my sick mother-in-law's chin, my husband and my sister were in my house. In my house. In my bed? The sheer, staggering depravity of it took my breath away. They used my kindness. They used my sense of duty to his family as their opportunity. He'd come home from work, she continued, her voice gaining this strange, narrative momentum, like she was telling a story, not confessing a sin. And I'd be here with Lily. You wouldn't be home yet. We would just talk. And one night, he kissed me. And it just happened from there. She made it sound so simple. So inevitable. So mundane. We had flirted before, she added quickly, as if that somehow excused it. Nothing serious, just, joking around. We always got along so well. No. I didn't know. I had never seen it. Or maybe I had just refused to see it. Maybe I had been so blind, so wrapped up in my own happy bubble, that I'd missed what was right in front of my face. And then she connected the final, horrifying piece. The piece that linked it all together. After a while, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, I started to, imagine. Like I told you. I'd be here, making dinner for Lily. And Mark would walk in the door from work, and he'd kiss me hello. And for just a second. I would let myself believe it. That he was coming home to me. That this was my life. My stomach churned. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to swallow, hard. The baby inside me gave a hard, violent kick, as if he was reacting to the poison in the room. And then, she whispered, her eyes wide, as if she was remembering her own delusion. I even started picturing myself, pregnant. I'd look in the mirror sometimes, after we were together, and I'd put my hand on my stomach and imagine a baby bump. I'd imagine it was his. That was it. That was the missing link. The "call me mom" comment. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a momentary fantasy. It was part of a larger, twisted, sick narrative she had built in her head. A life she was actively trying to steal from me, piece by piece. She wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was trying to become me. She was trying to replace me. The betrayal was so complete. So absolute. It wasn't just a physical affair. It was an erasure. It was a bottomless pit of deceit, and I had been standing on the edge of it for months, smiling, completely unaware I was about to be pushed in. I don't remember Janet leaving. I must have. I must have told her to go. Or maybe I just walked away from her. I have a vague memory of just turning my back on her while she was still talking, still sobbing. Sarah, please say something. I remember walking into the living room. The room where, just last night, I had seen her sitting so peacefully. I sat down on the sofa. Right on the spot where she had been. I heard the front door open and then close, very softly. And then there was just silence. A heavy, suffocating silence, filled with the ghosts of everything I had just learned. I sat there for I don't know how long. An hour? 2. I just stared at the blank, black TV screen. My body felt heavy. It felt numb. Like it wasn't mine. I was 7 months pregnant. I had a 3-year-old daughter upstairs, playing in her room, singing her little ABC song, completely unaware that her world had just been nuked from orbit. My husband. My sister. The 2 names just echoed in the empty, silent space of my mind. It wasn't real. It couldn't be real. This was the kind of thing you see in trashy daytime TV shows. This was the kind of plot you read about in grocery store novels. It doesn't happen. Not to you. Not in your quiet, normal, suburban life. But it was real. The 30 minutes in the car. His cold, defensive eyes. Her confession. The sickening, vivid details. It was all real. My marriage was a lie. My entire relationship with my sister, my whole life, was a lie. Everything I thought was solid, everything I had built, it was a house of cards. And they hadn't just pulled out the bottom card. They had taken a baseball bat to the whole thing. I was just sitting in the ashes. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Hot and slow. Then another. But I wasn't. I wasn't sobbing. I wasn't hysterical. I was too numb for that. It was just a quiet, steady leak. The grief, the shock, just leaking out of me from a heart that had just been shattered into a million tiny, irreparable pieces. I sat there, in the house that was supposed to be my safe haven, my sanctuary. I sat there, with a baby, his baby, kicking inside my belly. And I felt like I had never, ever been more alone in my entire life. If you're still listening to this, if you've stayed with me through all of this, I feel so alone right now, even just retelling it. Could you do me a favor? Could you please like this video, and just comment with the number 1 down below? It would just let me know that you're out there. That I'm not just talking into the void. To know that you're hearing me, that you're walking this path with me, even for just a minute, it would mean more to me than you know. Your support, just knowing you're there, it's a huge encouragement for me to keep going. So please, if you're here, just comment with the number 1 so I know. And now, I'll tell you what happened next. I continued to sit there on that couch, just drowning. Drowning in the silence, in the shock. 4 hours. The numbness, it was like a heavy blanket. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. But eventually, the numbness started to fade. And what replaced it was this raw, agonizing, burning pain. Every breath hurt. Every kick from the baby was a painful reminder. But then, something else happened. Through that thick, choking fog of grief, a tiny spark ignited. It was a flicker of anger. But it was more than just anger. It was defiance. I thought about them. I thought about Mark and Janet, together. Laughing at me. Lying to me. And I thought, no. No. They do not get to do this. They do not get to destroy me. They do not get to take my children's mother from them. I slowly, painfully, pushed myself up off the sofa. My back ached. My feet were swollen. I felt like I weighed 1,000 pounds. I walked down the hall, past the entryway where she had stood and confessed, and I walked into my small home office. The room where I paid the bills. And on the wall, in a simple, cheap black frame, was my nursing degree. I had worked so hard for that. Years of night classes at the community college, then transferring to the state university. Brutal clinical shifts where I was on my feet for 12 hours, running on coffee and adrenaline. Exams that made my head spin. I had earned that. I was Sarah. I was a registered nurse. An RN. I had worked in the ER. I had seen real trauma. I had seen car wrecks and gunshot wounds and people on the worst days of their lives. This was just betrayal. This was just lies. I could handle this. I wasn't just Mark's wife. I wasn't just Lily's mom. I was a professional. I had a skill. I had a career. Right now, I wasn't working. We had decided, he had convinced me, that I should take a few years off. After Lily was born, and until the new baby was in school. We can afford it on my salary, he had said. It'll be better for the kids, he had said. You deserve a break. Now, his words felt like a cage. A comfortable, pretty cage he had built around me, to make me dependent. To make me weak. But the cage wasn't locked. I looked at that degree on the wall, and I knew, with a sudden, absolute certainty. I could go back to work. It wouldn't be easy. Not with a newborn and a 3-year-old. But I could do it. I could get a job. I could support myself. I could support my children. I didn't need him. The realization was like a jolt of electricity. It was the first clean, pure breath I had taken all day. I wasn't alone. I looked at my phone, sitting on the desk. I scrolled through my contacts. I passed Janet's name, I felt a physical wave of nausea just seeing it, and I passed Mark's. I stopped on my younger brother's name. And my younger sister's, my other sister, my baby sister, who lived 3 states away. They would be horrified. They would be furious. But they would be on my side. They would help me. I wasn't alone. And then I walked back upstairs. I peeked into Lily's room. She had fallen asleep on her little rug, surrounded by her blocks. She had kicked off her socks, and her favorite stuffed bunny was clutched in her arms. She was so perfect. So innocent. And she deserved so much better than this house of lies. She deserved a mother who was strong. Not a mother who was a victim. And the baby inside me, this little life that was completely dependent on me, he deserved better, too. They were my reason. They were my why. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to fight. I went back to my office. I pulled a yellow legal pad and a pen out of the desk drawer. At the top, in big, shaky letters, I wrote, the plan. The first thing I wrote down, 1, lawyer. Find the best, sharpest, meanest divorce lawyer in the city. The second, 2, apartment. Start looking. Something small, something safe, something far away from here. The third, 3, job. Update my resume. Call my old supervisor at the hospital. The fourth, 4, money. Figure out the bank accounts. Figure out what was mine, what was his. The fifth, 5, custody. Full custody. He was not getting them. The words looked terrifying on the page. Divorce. Custody. But they also looked like freedom. For the first time all day, I felt like I could actually breathe again. The rest of the day passed in a strange, surreal blur. I was acting. I was playing the part of mom. I went upstairs and gently woke Lily from her nap. Hey, sweetie. Let's go get a snack. I made her a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I cut it into triangles, just the way she likes it. The world was ending, my life was in ruins, but Lily still needed her lunch. The simple, mundane act of it grounded me. I was still her mother. I was still here. We played with her blocks on the living room floor. In the very room where I had confronted Janet. In the very room where I had sat, numb, just an hour before. I built a tall, wobbly tower, and when it crashed down, Lily squealed with laughter. I laughed with her. It was a thin, brittle sound, but it was a laugh. I'm building a tower, I thought, and my whole life has just crashed down. The dread started to build around 5:30. The time he usually got home. By 6 o'clock, when I heard the garage door rumble open, my whole body was tense as a guitar string. He was home. I had to face him. I had to act normal. Just for a little while longer. I couldn't let him know that I knew. Not yet. Not until I had my plan in place. Not until I had spoken to that lawyer. He walked in through the kitchen door, looking tired from Home Depot? From work? Who even knew if that's where he'd been? Hey, he said, dropping his keys in the little bowl on the counter. What's for dinner? Hey, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady. I didn't look up from the pot of spaghetti sauce I was stirring. Just pasta. Smells good, he said. He came up behind me, and he put his hands on my shoulders. I flinched. My entire body recoiled, like I'd been touched with a hot poker. He must have felt it. He pulled his hands back immediately. You okay? Still upset about last night? I turned, forcing a small, tight smile. Just tired. You know. Pregnant and tired. I used his own excuse against him. We ate dinner together. All three of us. It was the single most excruciating, surreal meal of my entire life. I sat there, across the table from him. I watched him twirl spaghetti onto his fork. I watched him take a sip of his beer. I watched him ask Lily about her day, if she'd had fun with mommy. He looked like the same man I had married. He looked like the father of my children. But he was a stranger. He was a monster wearing my husband's face. How could he sit here? How could he laugh at something Lily said? How could he act so normal, knowing what he'd done? Knowing what I now knew? Or, did he not know? Did Janet not tell him? Was I the only one who knew the truth? The thought was even more chilling. Later that evening, after Lily was in bed, we were in the living room. He was watching some sports show, the volume too loud. I was on the sofa, pretending to read a book on my phone. I could feel him looking at me occasionally. He muted the TV. "Look, Sarah," he said, his voice trying to be gentle. "About last night. I've been thinking. And maybe I was a little harsh. I know you're stressed. I know you were just protecting Lily. Maybe you were right. I should have backed you up more." It was a weak, pathetic attempt at an apology. A peace offering. A month ago, a day ago, I might have leapt on it. I might have cried with relief. But now, I knew what it was. It was damage control. Janet must have called him. She must have told him she was coming over. Maybe she hadn't confessed everything. Maybe she just told him she'd confessed the jealousy part. Or maybe this was all him, trying to placate the hysterical pregnant wife so he could keep his comfortable life and his dirty, little, secret safe. I just looked at him over the top of my phone. My heart was a stone. "I'm just really tired, Mark," I said, my voice flat and empty. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I just want to go to bed." He looked relieved. "Okay," he said, nodding. "Okay, honey. Good idea. You get some rest." He unmuted the TV. I went upstairs. I got into bed. I couldn't stand to be in the same room with him for another second. I lay in the dark, on the very edge of my side of the bed, feeling the miles of cold sheets between us. He came up an hour later. I pretended to be asleep. I felt the bed dip as he got in. He didn't try to touch me. He just rolled over, and within 10 minutes, he was snoring. He was sleeping. He could sleep. I lay there, in the dark, my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. I listened to him snore, this man who had shattered my life, this man I had loved, and I felt nothing. Just a cold, hard, quiet emptiness. And in that emptiness, there was a tiny, hard kernel of resolve. The next morning was Monday. I waited. I waited until I heard his truck pull out of the driveway, until I heard the sound of the engine fade away. I got Lily settled in the living room with her cartoons and a sippy cup of milk. Then I went into my office. I closed the door. I picked up my phone. And I took out the yellow legal pad from the day before. I looked at the first item on my list. My hand was shaking, but my resolve was like steel. I opened my browser. And I typed in the words I never, ever thought I would: best divorce lawyer near me. It was time to make the call. It was time to take my life back.